There's probably no more respected name for family programming and as a destination than Disney. And yet today, Disney is promoting ideals that would be abhorrent to most traditional families. So what about it? Is the House of Mouse courageous or contagious? Stay tuned. Well, Nathan, over the last several days, Disney Corporation has got into some hot water for its stance on some bills being considered and actually signed into law down in Florida.
Yes, Florida, HB 1557, was to teach or make sure that teachers could not share about gender dysphoria, sexuality, or anything between just kindergarten, third grade. And of course, the woke establishment went bananas and they started calling it the Don't Say Gay bill, which there's nothing about that in there. No. And it's interesting that Disney, who Governor DeSantis of Florida said that weren't even interested while they were forming this law, but the woke mob got mad and they needed a big vocal mouthpiece, so they went to Disney. Disney, which its entire existence is about entertaining families and children, and now trying to push, because the woke mob got their president all riled up, and then he started attacking DeSantis and all, trying to stop this bill from being passed in the law by saying that we should sexualize our kindergartners to third graders. And this is coming out of Disney, the same company that just in the last few months found that they had a child pedophile ring within their borders, where employees walk out because they're not getting enough LGBT recognition. It's just, what is happening to Disney, Tim?
Well, I tell you what's happening to Disney, if they've been pitched over into the moral insanity that's rampaging through our society. And the sad reality is, we've also learned that the number of people within the Disney family, in other words, all the employees, is a very small minority, but they are controlling the agenda all the way up to the CEO. They have brought in diversity coaches and gender coaches to make sure that they insert queerness. There was one high-level person that said she has been unfettered in her effort to push queerness through all the Disney products. So if you turn on the Disney Channel or sit your children or grandchildren in front of the Disney Channel, any of their recent programming, I promise you, is programmed to indoctrinate your children with a worldview that is antithetical to the Scriptures. And yet they are now engaged again in this fight for this law, which has been totally misidentified by the media. They haven't even read the law, because to claim that it is something that says don't say gay, that is far from true. And again, we're talking about kids ages 5 through 8 that they now want to sexualize and promote all these kind of perverse ideas.
And you got to wonder too, when you look at some of the teachers that are protesting this, they're saying, well, I'm a kindergarten teacher and I need to express myself to my children. Now, wait a minute. Should we sexualize anybody at that young age group? But we're trying to teach youth, and especially little kids, that they don't know what their gender is. They can choose their gender. They could be gender benders and fluid, and as if that's the norm. And what we're seeing is the end time sign of how society is degenerating to the point that it's useless. And repeatedly throughout the Bible, when society gets that degenerate, that's when God steps in and destroys it, either through economic collapse or civil war or outside attack. Or we're seeing the United States just degenerate, and I wouldn't say just the United States, but we're seeing this all over the world. Gay rights protests and march all over the world, and I feel for these people. I want them to know Jesus Christ and all, but at the same time, they're trying to purposely sexualize children to create more of their kind and become the majority viewpoint. Now, how can humanity survive if the majority of humanity is homosexual?
We will not survive long, even with this craziness, and so something has got to give. You know, many years ago, Nathan, when my wife and I began to invest a small amount of money every month in mutual funds and stocks, I made it very clear I did not want to invest in what we considered sin stocks. So I didn't want to be invested in tobacco, alcohol, or pornography. And there's some others I wanted to steer away from. But I said, I'm not going to encourage the investing in entities that promote wickedness. I won't do it, and I don't want to profit off that. And some investment counselors would say, well, those are very profitable. I don't care. As a Christian, I'm not going to be invested in those regimes. I know many Christians, perhaps some of you watching today, go to Disney on a regular basis, or at least have looked forward to a trip to Disney World. And let's face it, it has always been a wonderful place to take your family, but you need to weigh whether even taking your children to Disney World, whether setting them in front of the television to watch, again, modern Disney productions, is encouraging and supporting an entity which is now perpetuating wickedness throughout our society. That's a consideration I think each one of us needs to make.
And it's hard too, because Disney as a parent corporation owns so much more than we realize. Yes, they own Marvel, they own Pixar, they own Star Wars, but they own news corporations, they own restaurants, they're huge. I mean, they are a massive industry, and you really can't boycott everything all at the same time. No. But you can make people aware of that's what their position is. And I think in the end, the Lord will honor those of us who stand up against that by calling them out and saying, hey, get back into what you were called to do. Walt Disney's rolling over in his grave.
Yes, he is.
He wants you to entertain children and bring them joy, not to sexualize them and give them perverse ideas and turn them into homosexuals or gender benders. That's not why you exist. And if you don't exist that way, you as a corporation aren't going to last very long.
No, as a matter of fact, if you are a stockholder in Disney right now, you can make your voice heard through various stockholder methods, or by contacting the company, or just advocating locally and with your friends, your newspaper. And let's face it, regardless of whether you're invested in Disney Corporation, as a Christian, you are a stockholder in the kingdom of heaven. And so you are always an advocate for what is godly and true as revealed in the Word of God. So we encourage every one of you who, again, is invested in the kingdom of heaven to be an outspoken stockholder right here in our world and push back on this foolishness, even coming out of the house of mouth.